Hello and welcome to the Overlanding podcast, a podcast dedicated to vehicle-dependent travel. I'm your host, Andy Smith. Throughout the series, I'll be chatting with adventurous people who have chosen to travel the world by bicycle, motorcycle, car and truck. The aim of the podcast is to discover what motivates people to embark on life-changing journeys and to hear some incredible stories along the way. Gareth and Lisa had led fairly adventurous lives, shared a passion for the outdoors and had undertook several short overlanding trips in their Land Rover Defender before they decided to emigrate to Australia from the UK. Having decided to make the move, what better way to get there than drive? Okay, let's hear their story. Joining me today around the campfire is Griff from Sirocco Overland. Hi Griff.
Hey.
And we're going to be talking about his kind of extensive travels. So if you could, if we start right at the beginning, I guess that's probably the best place to start. How did you kind of get into overlanding?
Bit of sort of from two sort of sides of the coin really. The first was I guess was from travelling. I did a bit of sort of backpacking after university, went out to Southeast Asia and absolutely fell in love with travelling. I did find that getting to the places I want to go to was very difficult by sort of public transport and things, so that was always in the back of my mind, that was always an issue. And then in the UK started going green laning with the Land Rover and some friends, and really enjoyed camping and stuff, and kind of merged the two from there. We started doing a lot of sort of heavy off-roading, and then after breaking quite a few things, decided that wasn't the way I wanted to go, and decided to use the Land Rover for travel. And it kind of all went from there, really.
Yeah, so it kind of grew from a love of being outdoors.
Absolutely, yeah.
And backpacking when you went in Southeast Asia, right?
Yeah.
Was that the first time you'd done any kind of major travelling to those kind of developing countries?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I mean, I used to go to sort of Europe with my parents when I was a lot younger. But yeah, that was really my first trip, other than sort of Greece and places like that. But yeah, my first sort of proper trip on my own. It was really good. Well, I went with a friend, but he got typhoid and I had to get him sent home, so I carried on my own. So yeah, it was good.
And how was that? Did you find that it kind of opened your eyes to the rest of the world, and were you kind of bitten by it? Was it like something you felt you wanted to do more of when you got back?
Yeah, definitely something I wanted to do more of. It was, not sure I'd say it was an eye opener, but it certainly it was just good. I just loved it. I just love sort of travelling and just living and eating with locals, and just getting about, and everything about it.
Yeah. And then to jump forward then, how did you kind of, because you've done several overlanding trips, so can you just kind of talk us through those and what you did in what order?
Yeah, so the first trip with our Land Rover was to Morocco, which I think is a lot of people's first trip. That was 2008, so that was good. I'd only passed my driving test the year before, I think, and so it was a bit of a first time driving in Europe, first overland trip. Yeah.
So how old were you at this point?
Now I've got to do some sums now. Can't remember, 25?
Okay.
26?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, I think so, yeah. So that was our first trip. That was, that kind of made things worse, really, because that sort of set in stone everything that's happened up until now, really.
Yeah. And that
they would never going to travel in a different way again, you know. Sort of traveling with your own vehicle, I don't think you can beat it.
Yeah, and that kind of trip to Morocco, I think is many people's kind of induction to overlanding, just because Morocco is so accessible from Europe.
Yeah.
And how long were you there? Did you venture around the whole country? Did you get to drive out in the dunes and up in the mountains? And
yeah, we did a 4-week trip, so a sort of week transit through Spain and then 3 weeks in country. So we got down to the Sahara. We got down to Ouarzazate, and then down to Tan and down to the coast down at City Ifni.
Yeah.
And then worked our way back up then through the Atlas Mountains. And yeah, it was really good.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. And were you did you go on your own with that trip, or did someone come with you? Or
yeah, we did. No, we went completely by ourselves, just me, Lisa, and the Land Rover. It was great.
And how did had you been with Lisa a long time before you kind of left on that trip? And had she done any kind of travel like that before?
Yeah, Lisa had done a round the world trip just when we finished university in, it would have been 2002 roughly. No, sorry, not 2002, 2005. Yeah, so Lisa did a round the world trip with her friend. So she'd done a little bit of travelling, but yeah, for both of us it was kind of the first sort of trip we'd done with the car, really.
Yeah.
I think we went to Croatia in 2006 and backpacked around there for 3 weeks. So yeah, this was, like I say, this was just a follow-on.
Yeah.
With the vehicle.
And did you find that there was a change in the dynamic of your relationship being in the car, or was the kind of dynamic between the two of you similar as to when you went backpacking? Or because I know sometimes it can be intensified because you're in such close proximity with one person for such extended periods. How did you find that? Was that a challenge?
I think for us, I think it was a lot easier. I mean, I do read about people having trouble. They go from their sort of relationships at home into a vehicle and have all sorts of sort of dramas. But through Green Lane and on weekends away camping with the truck and things, we spent a lot of time in the cab together anyway. So to go away for 4 weeks, and after spending 3 weeks in a tent together and things like that, we're pretty close. It's not really an issue, to be honest.
I think it can.
Fine.
I think it can go one of two ways, can't it? I think when you travel in this way, it can really cement your relationship. Because when you're in those kind of scenarios, you do to some degree rely, because you're both bringing different skill sets into what you do, so you end up relying on each other to some degree, which only kind of cements your relationship. Okay, so after the Morocco trip, what did you're well and truly kind of into this way of travelling now. How long was it before you set off on your next trip?
Yeah, it was about 12 months, and then we just did a short, cheap trip down through the French Alps. A friend of mine had logged a lot of old historic routes along the French-Italian border. So we used those routes and just took 2 weeks off and headed down there and went to Monaco and up into the Alps around Italy. Yeah, that was a good trip as well.
Yeah, and that particular trip, was that more about the kind of challenge of the driving, or are you keen to go out and see the wildlife, or are you keen to get as far away from human habitation as possible? Like, what are the things you're interested in when you're doing these kind of trips?
I think for me it's sort of landscape and different cultures, I guess, in a way, and the remoteness, it does play a big part in it. Not so much in that trip, but in a lot of the trips I do kind of seek out those sort of forgotten places and places people tend to not go to and things like that. So
because you studied geology at uni, right?
I did, yeah.
So does that kind of, well, I can imagine travelling through Central Asia must have been kind of really incredibly interesting for you, because the landscape there is insane. Yeah, the formations are quite interesting. Yeah. It's not so much a driving force though for me. No. Just a job. Okay, so from that trip then, when did you what was the next step after that trip?
So that was 2009. So in 2010, so after the GFC, in 2008, things were going pretty downhill for us at work and things in Bristol. So we decided we were going to up and leave for Australia, and that was 2010. So we started saving and putting some money aside and working things out. And that was sort of the lead up for our 2013 trip. So we put some budgets together and worked out it would take about 3 years to clear some debts and save enough money. And that's where 2013 came in and the deadline was set.
Yeah. And throughout that time, has your website been running the entirety of your kind of overlanding trips, or at which point did you set up the website?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, website was set up just before the Morocco trip, really. Because I've done a lot of research. I mean, there's tour companies out there, not wanting to bash tour companies, but they do charge a lot of money, but they do provide a good service. But I just felt that we didn't need that, so I thought there's got to be a way you can do this by yourself, and that's kind of how it all started. And I had so much information from other overlanders and other websites and people who make open source map software and things like that, that I just felt that I could make a website that sort of gave something back.
Yeah.
So on there, it started off with like quite a heavy sort of links page with links to all the places I gathered my information, and then I started doing trip reports and things like that, and it all kind of grew from there, really. I just wanted it to be something that someone could just look at and say, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
And just following our footsteps, basically, or do their own thing, but give someone the confidence from looking at a website to go, yeah, actually, I can do that.
Yeah. And
that's kind of where the website came from.
Yeah, and I think you kind of mentioned just then that you had quite a hefty links page, and certainly when I initially started researching our trip, I did similar things. I'd scour the internet, and that's actually where I came across your website. Was way back. Yeah. I don't know. It must have been 2010 or 11, I guess. My memory's
I
so
think
good.
so. I do remember talking to you then as well.
Yeah. And just being incredibly inspired by, and thinking the exact same thing. Well, if other people can do this, why can't we do this? And I think that kind of level of inspiration from your kind of peers is it's one of the reasons why I set up the podcast, really, so that we could get people's stories out there and hopefully encourage other people to kind of experience travelling this way. I've completely lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere. So from your kind of website then, and throughout this whole kind of period, have you noticed growth within the overland market? Because it's something I've certainly been aware of over the last 5 years. Is there seems to be, or it may be just that I'm getting more kind of immersed into the community, but there seems to be a lot of growth within the community, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's huge growth, I think, compared to looking back quite some time. I think a lot of that obviously has to do with the internet and availability of information and things like that. When you talk to some people, you talk to some old people, and they say things like, "Oh yeah, we did that back in the '70s."
Yeah.
And it's just incredible. Their stories aren't out there, so it makes you wonder, when you're looking at the internet, for every 5 stories that you read, how many more people are actually doing this and not recording it, not getting it out there?
Yeah. It's one thing that I found really interesting is I've been trying to track down people that have done trips in the 70s and 80s just to hear their stories, and it's incredibly difficult to find some of these people.
It is, yeah.
And one thing we noticed as we were travelling, and we met kind of a lot of other travellers, we did meet quite a lot of kind of older people who were in their 60s, 70s, and even a couple in their 80s, who had been on the road for really long periods of time, extended periods of time, and trying to track some of these people down is proving quite difficult. So from those kind of earlier trips then, and making that big decision to move, I'm always keen to talk about kind of people's motivations, and yours, seemingly from what you've just said, tends to come from a kind of a combination of things that kind of all fell into place, I guess. So a kind of a love of the outdoors, kind of going backpacking and getting a taste for it, and then realising that travelling by vehicle is one of the best ways to see a country. So I guess that's kind of how you got into it. Did when most kind of normal people could have decided that they were just going to fly to Australia when they decided to emigrate. And I like the fact that you took the opportunity to kind of travel in that way as part of the move. When you were kind of making that journey, how did it feel? Because it must ultimately you were setting out not only on an epic trip, which is quite a big deal on its own, but you were kind of setting off for a new chapter in your life, because you were making a massive move at the same time. So how did that feel, and kind of what were you going through kind of mentally in that trip?
I think, it's hard to explain. I don't know. It was hard. I think initially it was quite hard. Bizarrely, me and Lisa both said, like, if because the first part of our trip through Europe was heading up to Norway, up through Nordkapp.
Yeah.
So we always said, if something went wrong, or if we decided this wasn't what we wanted to do, we could always turn back. That was always what we said to each other. And then, start getting down through Bulgaria and Turkey. It was not that far. We still turn back. And it's only when you get to the other end of Kazakhstan that you go, it's not quite worth going back now. So it was always our thing. I think it took the other thing as well for me. I'm quite not, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of financially aware, I guess. So throughout that entire trip, I was always thinking, have we done the right thing? Is this the right thing to do? And I think it took the first 6 months, I think, before I realised or accepted, I guess, that this was definitely what I wanted to do. Spending the money doing this is well worth it. But I had to fight quite a few demons up until that point.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things like that going on, and like you said, it was a lot of unknown as well. I only had a holiday working visa for Australia, and Lisa, because she's a little bit older than me, didn't have a holiday working visa, so she was coming in on a tourist visa. So, we were going to get to Australia with next to no money, and and just work it out basically, and that's kind of how it went.
Yeah. That kind of attitude though is something that I've noticed, and is a common thread across a lot of the people I speak to on the podcast, is that general idea that things have a way of working out. And I think there's a kind of typical attitude amongst overlanders, and I think it's ingrained in you because you don't really have much choice when you travel in this way, because there are so many kind of unknowns. For example, there could be political unrest in a country that you're planning on going through, then all of a sudden all the borders are closed. So you have to be flexible enough that you can kind of, make plans and change your kind of route to some degree. When you were travelling kind of through Europe then, and obviously you'd been to Morocco and done quite a lot of other travelling before then, but when did things start getting really, really interesting for you when you're on the road, and was there a certain point where you thought, this is actually becoming a proper adventure now?
I think even that the first part heading up into Norway. So we left end of January. So we headed up to Nordkapp early February. So it was the height of winter pretty much, and we were heading through the Arctic Circle to the most northerly point in Europe. We were camping out -20. I think -25 was the coldest we had. And again, due to sort of finances, we worked out we'd do 4 nights camping and 1 night in a hotel. So the first 3 weeks was pretty tough, but we got through it.
That's incredibly brave, I guess, to some degree. And when had you, obviously you have some time constraints because you're quite often dictated by the weather in certain countries, but was that a conscious decision to leave that early, and did you realise how challenging it was actually going to be?
No, it wasn't really. We weren't planning to leave in January, but a friend of ours was planning this trip with, I think, 3 other Land Rovers, and he asked if we wanted to come along, because I think we were going to leave around March-ish when weather was a bit better, and we were going to sort of duck down to Turkey, basically. Just make a beeline for Turkey as quick as we could, so we didn't have to spend heaps of money in Europe. Then this trip came up, and he asked if we wanted to join, and we were like, why not? As we were sort of relaxing into all our packing and things, we then had to get back on the case and do some quite sort of cold weather specific things to the vehicle and clothing and things like that. So yeah, there's quite a lot involved in just that couple of weeks in Scandinavia. So.
Yeah, and the vehicle you took then was a 90 Defender, right?
Yeah, short wheelbase.
Short wheelbase, and you had the trailer as well, though.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So the theory, the sort of reason behind that was for Greenland in the UK. So before even Morocco came about, short wheelbase vehicles fine in the UK, and they're very manoeuvrable and very good off road. So I just put a lot of money into that, built that up, and then with Morocco being a 4-week trip, short wheelbase, no problem. French Italian Alps, short wheelbase, no problem. 12-month cross-continent trip, small problem. I did a lot of calcs and working things out with payloads and things like that, and I think we might have been able to do it from a payload point of view, but volume of gear, I think we couldn't quite do it, not comfortably anyway. So the options were sell it and buy a long wheelbase vehicle, but I've just felt that was a lot of money, and like I said, I put a lot of time and effort into the 90. So this trailer came up, and I've done a lot of research on trailers, and it seemed like the way to go. So got that all set up and kitted out, and did that.
And with the trailer, there wasn't any logistical problems with like off-road driving or any problems taking a trailer through borders. I presume they just consider it to be part of the vehicle in most countries, right?
Not quite, because trailers are a bit of an oddity. I got a heads up from someone who tried a similar thing, tried to get into Russia with their trailer, didn't have any paperwork, and they got turned back at the border, so they couldn't get into Russia.
No.
They had to leave their trailer behind in Georgia, I think. They just gave it to a local. So I got the heads up about that early on. So I probably shouldn't sort of admit to this on a podcast, but I took my dad's paperwork that he had for his caravan, which is on like a register, and just got onto Photoshop and modified that.
Excellent.
To match number plates and things like that.
Yeah.
And and it worked. 16 international border crossings.
Yeah, that's wicked. And I'd actually, there's no shame in admitting that at all, because I know quite a few people, and myself included, who've used, for example, we've used our carnet as an insurance document to show the police at times,
right.
Actually, that's the least of my crimes, but I won't admit to the others. But in foreign countries, the paperwork, and if you're a foreigner in their particular country, they have no idea what paperwork you have or what you're supposed to have. And even at borders, we found that they were massively unaware of how to deal with like a car coming from England at their own border. Sometimes you're actually showing the customs officials how they should be doing their job when you actually arrive at the border. So, and it's sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say we had that in Afghanistan. Trying to get back into Tajikistan, that was a bit of a drama. But exactly, this is what you just said. Nightmare.
Yeah. So your kind of route took you. Which way then? Did you go down through southeastern Europe, then through Turkey and Georgia and into Russia? Did you go that way, or?
Yes, we did. Yeah, so we shot up through Denmark, Norway up to Nordkap, and then came back down through Sweden, and then Germany. Went through Austria, Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, Bulgaria, Turkey, and then through Georgia and into Russia.
Yeah. And what was your plan for Russia? And you kind of headed directly east, right? And how far did you get through Russia?
Well, we took a shortcut really and came in through Uzbekistan from the west there.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, Kazakhstan, and then into Uzbekistan that way.
Yeah.
So we weren't in Russia very long. So we met up with John in Stavropol, in Russia. I had a couple of nights there with him. That was good. And
that's John Beardmore, who's a previous podcast guest. Cool. And then, so did you travel the Pamir then through Central Asia? If you went to Afghanistan, where did you cross into Afghanistan? Ishkashim.
Ishkashim, the Pamirs were high on my list of places to go, so I was really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Certainly that kind of whole area was my holy grail as well. It was like I was really keen to visit that area. I'd just seen incredible photographs and it just seemed like a wild place. How did you find the driving around there? Good. And kind of on your trip, do you specifically look out for off-road areas, or how do you kind of? I kind of guessing I know the answer to this, but do you do long stretches on the highway and then try and find short, nice off-road areas, or some people I've spoken to just like to do a lot of off-road driving as much as they can. How do you kind of approach that?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess we just look at a map and work out the places we want to get to, and then find a relatively obscure way of getting there.
Yeah.
I think we just like to hit more points and more places than we do taking a highway somewhere and then just ducking down. We'd rather come off early, have a look at a few places, and then get to that place.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so we.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, go on. No, go on.
So through kind of Central Asia, how long were you travelling through Central Asia? And did you go through Turkmenistan then as well?
No, we didn't. I was thinking about it, but could do it doing the ferry across. But I think we just knocked that on the head in the end because there was just too much uncertainty with the ferry and things at the time. So
yeah. We've heard nightmare stories from people taking that ferry.
Yeah. I really wanted to go to the gas crater, but yeah, just not happening.
Yeah. And actually, the gas crater was also high up on my agenda, and we travelled through the Turkmenistan, but we got a transit visa, and the route was dictated on the transit visa, and it was the other end. It was the other end of the country. And at the particular time when we were applying for our kind of transit visa, loads of people were getting turned down. So we were just kind of thankful that we got any visa, because we did actually have to go through that way to get to Iran.
Because I think a lot of people just ignore what's on the transit visa and go there anyway, don't they?
Yeah, it depends.
Didn't fancy that?
Yeah, well, we did. We did, but we crossed really far over in the east, and and the gas crater's way up in the west,
northwest,
the northwest, and we did actually. They did check all our paperwork, all the checkpoints, and they did go through really strictly. And on one occasion, we actually did take a detour, thinking it was a shortcut, which was off the kind of designated route that they had given us. And then when we got to the end of the shortcut, there was a barrier across the road, and we were like, we weren't really expecting that. And they went through all the paperwork, and they were not happy that we had taken this particular shortcut. But I don't know, we kind of smiled a lot and got through it. Which is typically the way.
Just the only way, yeah.
So from there, then, which route did you go? I'm trying to picture in my head. So if you travelled through Central Asia, and then you kind of dipped through Russia into Kazakhstan, then down into Tajikistan, then did you head through Pakistan then, and into India?
No.
Which way did you go?
No, we didn't. No, we headed north from there. So we went from the Pamirs, briefly into Afghanistan, back into the Pamirs, and then out through Kyrgyzstan, and then we just transited Kazakhstan, because it's pretty boring, that sort of east side. Loads of people say, oh, it's beautiful. It's not that boring, but once you've been to the Pamirs and you've been to Kyrgyzstan, it's pretty bloody boring.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're the worst roads in the world, I think.
Yeah.
Just horrendous. And then just into the Altai through Russia. Did about 7 days through there, and then into Mongolia.
Okay. And how did you find your time in Mongolia? Because that certainly is a challenge and can be fun. What time of year were you there?
Yeah, that would have been July we were there. Okay. The whole month of July, I think. Yeah. It was, yeah.
That's certainly a good time to be there, but the weather the weather can be really changeable still.
Yeah, it was. We had, the first day we had a lot of sleet and hail, and it was very cold. And then after that, it kind of warmed up a bit, sort of 20 odd degrees, and it was pretty good. So.
Yeah. And
yeah, it was good.
Any problems in
not in Mongolia,
but in general?
Oh, in general, problems. We had a few problems in Siberia towards the end, just with the vehicle, because it was getting pretty tired towards the end.
Yeah.
And we did quite a lot of hard roads and stuff.
So I presume then from Mongolia you headed kind of north back into Russia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Up to Irkutsk, and then picked up an old logging road, and then headed out to the north end of Lake Baikal. Yeah. And then we hit the BAM road.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we thought we'd have a crack at that.
Ah, okay. That was on our original route when we were planning. I was really keen to go up there, and I presume you had seen the Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman series and seen the driving. Is that what kind of gave you a taste for up there, or did you kind of hear about it through other overlanders?
I heard it. Well, yeah. So there was Ewan and Charlie when they did the Road of Bones in the north end of Siberia. But have you heard of the guys from Zabriskie Extreme?
No.
Walter Kolbach. They're all over that place, and they've got a lot of good documented stuff and good photos and things. And reading their reports was is kind of what set that up.
Yeah.
Actually, going back to they are bikers.
Yeah. Actually, I may have seen that. I think.
Yeah, going back to when we were planning it. Actually, I wanted to do a Trans-Africa trip, but Lisa wasn't that keen. So it was only after reading their ride reports on the Road of Bones and that far northeast Russia that I kind of got keen on that. Mentioned it to Lisa, and she's always wanted to go to Siberia. So that was that, and that's how our trip kind of came about, really.
And how was the driving up there? Because it can be quite challenging through that area, right?
Yeah, it's the roads are pretty rough. You basically, after we left Irkutsk, it was pretty much, we didn't see any tarmac apart from in the cities. Apart from in Yakutsk and Mirny, there's only like 20 k's of tarmac out of town, and then you're back on dirt. So I think we did the last 10,000 k's of our trip was pretty much all off road.
Yeah.
So it's pretty hard because we went after the BAM, which we didn't complete, unfortunately. We stopped at the Vidin Bridge, and Lisa wasn't too keen on that, so we turned around there. We took a freight barge from Ustkut up to Mirny, so that was quite good. So you get onto this little barge for 3 days and float up the Lena River for 1,000 kilometers, and then went into Mirny, and then from there over to Yakutsk. But we got a bit held up in Mirny, actually, because on the way up we got off the ferry. We'd had 3 days on this ferry with all these truckers who just wanted to get us drunk because we were foreign. So it was a lot of vodka consumed. But they kept warning us about the locals, saying the locals, Yakutia people, couldn't handle their alcohol and all this stuff. You know, the kind of things you hear everywhere. Local people are bad. Blah, blah, blah. We were like, whatever. So when we got off the ferry, we started driving, looking for a place to wild camp. So we left the city of Lensk, I think it is, and then headed north. And it's about 10 o'clock at night, and the taiga up in Siberia is so dense. There's very few places to pull off and actually camp. So it's getting dark, and then my driver's side window just exploded. So that shit us up a little bit.
Okay.
So we just kept driving through the night and arrived in Mirny at 3 a.m. Where we met a really nice policeman who put our vehicle into his police lockup and let us stay at his house, and we were there for 7 days.
Okay.
And he helped us get the window fixed, and it was good. Had a good time in Mirny.
Yeah. What was the deal with the window then? Was it just a freak stone that flicked up and took it out, or?
I still have absolutely no idea. So just a forest road, probably doing 80 k's an hour. No other traffic, no one around, no lights, nothing. But my window just completely exploded and just fell in on me. I just carried on driving. Didn't stop.
Bizarre. That's nuts.
Very bizarre, yeah. And like I say, still to this day, I don't know. I think I looked at the GPS at the time, and there was a turn off for a village that was about 10 k's back down the road, and I wondered if maybe some kids were up at the junction and they see, because obviously this freight barge comes up like, I don't know, once a week or whatever, and then there must have been 50, 60 vehicles that are all on this same road heading up to Mirny.
Yeah.
So I wonder if these kids are just firing catapults, just little stones at passing cars. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what I reckon it was.
That's a possibility, yeah. Or a BB gun or something. Don't know.
Yeah, I don't reckon it would have been any worse than that, because I reckon it would have got me in the head otherwise.
Yeah. That is bizarre. That's really
really weird. That's probably the weirdest thing that happened on our trip, I think.
Yeah. I have, I was thinking it could possibly be a stone that's been flicked up. I got hit in the face once by a stone that came off our own tyre, and somehow, I have no idea how, came in through the driver's window and hit me in the face.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, and again, just completely shocked me. Like, you just don't expect things like that to happen.
Yeah.
Very bizarre. And how did you find being in Russia? Because we certainly found it one of the most challenging countries. Just dealing with the language and the people. Yeah. The people were amazing once you got past. Yes. Once you got past the tough, hard, stern veneer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we absolutely loved Russia. To the point where it's one of the countries that we could quite easily go and live there, kind of thing. Politics and stuff aside. But yeah, Siberia, just found it amazing. We before we left the UK, we did 6 months at the local university learning Russian.
Okay, that's really useful.
Yeah, we went pretty well versed in Russian, and that helped out a lot.
Yeah,
was good.
I could see how that would benefit for sure. Because we went with absolutely no Russian, and then soon picked up the basics. Yes, please. Hello, thank you. But to be honest, it didn't help much.
No, it's hard, isn't it? They don't speak any English, and they're not inclined to really help out tourists either, in a way. I don't know.
It's a really fascinating country, and I think, and actually we noticed as we travelled further and further east and into the areas, like when you would go to like all the rural areas where they clearly. And I think a lot of the people have probably never actually heard anyone speak English or ever met a foreigner. And we found the whole situation really bizarre. Like we travelled through one town, and it was quite a pretty big town. And we went into a supermarket, and it was a developed supermarket. They had barcode scanners, well-stocked shelves, quite a modern supermarket. And the staff were hiding behind the shelves because they heard us speak English, and they wouldn't come out. And it's just...
That's awesome.
Yeah, we just found it bizarre. And actually... We did hear some people talking in the shop. We understood them. They were like, we could hear them talking to each other saying, I think they're German. And then we replied in Russian and go, no, we're not German. We're British. Yeah.
They quite like that.
But and actually that same town we had the supermarket encounter in, we were running quite low on fuel, and we were looking for either a garage or, you know how it is up there, you can quite often buy fuel out the back of a van on the side of the road or wherever. And we stopped to ask someone, and it was a woman pushing a pram, and she was on Emma's side of the car. So Emma opened the window, went down and said hello to her, we're looking for fuel. And the woman just looked at her and just ran off, and just like... and it was kind of encounters like that. We were just like, oh man, this country is hard work. But at the time we found it quite stressful, but kind of looking back, it was one of our favourite countries to visit.
Yeah, it's definitely high up on our list. Yeah,
and I certainly want to go back, and because we never ventured up into the very far kind of northeast, and that's where I really want to go. I want to head that way.
Yeah.
So where did your route take you from there?
So after getting stuck in Mirny for a couple of days,
did you manage did you manage to replace the window then, or?
Yeah. So Andre, the chief of police bloke we were living with, he helped us out. He got the window cut out of Perspex, because up there they've all got secondary windscreens. Like, they buy a new car and then they cut another windscreen out in Perspex and gaffer tape that over the top of the first windscreen.
Okay.
Because they get so many stones flicking up, they're always smashing windows. So anyway, there's all this perspex hanging around, and we took the door card off the Defender and made a cardboard template, and then knocked one up.
Okay.
Yeah, and it worked really well. I've had it here in Australia for about 12 months because I couldn't afford to buy a replacement glass window. So I've still got it. It's my spare, and I'm going to keep it in the trailer in case it happens again.
Yeah, that's a good plan.
Because it'll fit in the passenger side as well, I've got a replacement window. So. Yeah, it's cool. Quite like it. But yeah, so from there, we went across to Yakutsk. Had a couple of days there prepping the truck again for ready to head to Magadan. So it's about 2,000 k's each way from Yakutsk to Magadan. And we headed across there, and that was beautiful. That was awesome.
Yeah. And then from there, because this is where, when we were originally planning our kind of route, it always was seemingly a dead end if we were to drive that way.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So
you can ship out of Magadan, but I think it's very expensive, and you have to know people. So being quite tight as I am, we got to Magadan, turned around, drove back. And drove all the way back down to Vladivostok.
So how did that work with your visa then? Did you have a double entry Russian business visa? And
yes, we had a multi-entry Russian business visa.
Yeah.
So we could come and go as many times as we all want and stay 90 days, I think it was, in total. So the first transit through Stavropol, where we met John, I think was 7 days. And then we did 7 days in the Altai. So we had 2.5 months in Siberia.
Yeah.
Which was fantastic.
And I think that was the other problem with our route. We kind of entered Russia from Nordkap up through that direction through Finland.
Oh yeah.
And ended up coming into Russia in the really far north, in the west. And literally by the time we'd driven all the way across it, that had pretty much used up our visa because the country is so huge.
Yeah.
But I'm always curious to find out if because I think a lot of the bikers still head that way because they're obviously they can fly their bikes out. When they get to the end, which is a lot easier.
You can fly out of Magadan very easily, actually. And I do know a couple of guys who took trucks up there and have shipped their trucks. It's not an international port though, so your truck still has to go down to Vladivostok, get uncrated or out of the container, gets checked over, and then gets put back in again. And that's where a lot of the expense comes from. Yeah. It does work out as quite an expensive endeavour.
Yeah.
So we just drove back instead.
Yeah, because
another 5,000 k's or something.
Yeah, because when I was following you on your website, I was like, how are they getting up there? And I was always a bit confused as to what your kind of end game was when you got there, and how you were going to resolve that. Okay, so
I think we just accepted we were driving back. It's a long way, but you don't have any choice, really.
Yeah. Unless
you throw money at it, which money we didn't have, so...
Yeah. Well, the scenery's completely different when you're facing the other direction.
Yeah. It was actually, because winter was kicking in at that point, so it was just... Yeah, just got into early September, so it was starting to snow on the way back, so... Yeah, it got down to 0 quite a lot, so our winter sleeping bags came out again, so that was good.
Yeah. And, like, those kind of challenges are up there as well, I think are all part of it. Like the weather can change so dramatically, especially in, like, Mongolia, for example, the weather can change so dramatically. And certainly we noticed that in Russia as well. So what differences, how did you have to prep the car? Like when you went up through Scandinavia in the winter, what changes did you have to make to the car to deal with the temperature?
We actually, I kind of just went through all the things that a lot of people do and just sort of knocked a few in the head and just did the essential things. So, for example, we needed a new windscreen because my original one was all scratched up from the previous owner's dog. So I got a heated windscreen put in, which I managed to get quite cheap, so that was good. Put some heated mirrors in, which was easy enough, and just insulated the cab. So that was basically it. I think I put a new heater matrix in and made sure that was running red hot, and run a blind over the radiator as well, stop the airflow getting through, so the engine stayed warm.
Yeah.
What else did we do? We got some temporary studs for the tyres as well. They didn't work very well. I don't recommend those. That's about it. Some other people went crazy with diesel burning heaters and stuff like that, but my theory was we're only there for 2-3 weeks, then we're going to Australia. Well, I'm not going to need a diesel burning heater, so we'll just muscle through 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, and you didn't have any problems starting the car in the mornings, or?
No, that one morning when it was minus 25, I was a bit worried, I have to admit, because one of the other guys had put 12-volt heaters around his batteries to keep his batteries warm, so he could start his car. That's something they do in Canada and places like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't bother. I thought, nah, we'll be all right. The morning it was minus 25, he couldn't start his car, so I was getting a bit worried. And so I jumped in and it turned over, but it fired up fine. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I was pretty impressed.
And did you change the oil or anything? Were you
only slightly. I mean, our motor's quite an old motor. I usually run sort of 15 weight to 40 oil. I think we dropped down to 10 to 40. Nothing crazy. Like I say, it's still an old engine. It's fine.
Yeah. Good stuff.
But yeah, that was about it. I think there was nothing really that special in it, and it got through with no dramas. You know, the usual dramas everyone gets, like frozen locks, frozen fuel filler caps, and frozen everything really, toothpaste, everything. But yeah, all that normal stuff. But the vehicle was I love my truck. Gets me through everything.
Yeah. So from kind of Russia then, where did you head? Back through Mongolia and into China, or?
No, we drove back down. So we drove back from Magadan. We drove all the way down to Vladivostok, where we stayed with. So Lisa's a marine biologist, and she's met up with one of the leading experts on. I'm not going to say what it is because I can't quite remember the exact scientific name, but she's quite good friends with him, and he, funny enough, lives in Vladivostok, so he said, come and stay with us. So we went and stayed with those guys for, I think it was 10 days before we shipped out. And that was kind of the end of our trip, and I'm really glad we did, actually, because we had to clean the truck quite thoroughly for Australia.
Yeah.
So we had everything scattered out on their lawn. Trailer was empty, truck was empty, stuff everywhere. But without those guys, I think we'd have been pretty stuffed. So really appreciate it there.
So you undertook all the cleaning yourself, because I know that in Australia they can be incredibly strict.
They can, yeah.
So how did you go about that? Were you literally like scrubbing the engine with a toothbrush? Was it that extreme?
Yeah, it does come down to that. I went through my socket set and cleaned all my sockets with a toothbrush. And on all the boxes we had, you know, they've got those little reinforcing fins and stuff, and it just collects all the dust. It was just dust everywhere and mud everywhere. And our shipping agent ensured me we'd get the underside of the truck clean before we put it in the container. So we just concentrated on the inside. But I think we spent 7 days solid. So I think we put about 70. No, well, it would have been about 140 man hours into cleaning the truck and trailer.
Yeah, that's
and then
insane.
before putting in the container. Yeah, I know. I didn't feel like we had any other choice, though. I don't know. It's just one of those things. You've got to do it. Just get on with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's certainly no choice in it. It's a few people I've spoken to who've gone that way and done the same. And I heard one story, actually. There was a fella who had a big truck. I can't remember who it was. It might have been a Unimog. Was
it a Unimog?
Yeah.
I think I read the same.
Maybe.
Same thing.
And basically, he spent a long time cleaning it. And then
it wasn't good enough.
No. On this particular person, maybe they got turned down once. Maybe I don't remember. But anyway, they got the vehicle in eventually, and then he had some work done on the truck where they changed the departure angle of the box on the back, and basically what happened is they cut into the box, and then loads of just sand fell out from in the box. So it's just kind of pointless that they go through the cleaning exercise and you spend that much time cleaning the truck, but there will always be like
there's always something.
you know what it's like. The dust gets absolutely everywhere.
And that was part of the issue, because like I say, our shipping agent said, we'll jet wash it before it goes into the container. So on the day it came to shipping, it was on the back of a low loader, and we went into the jet wash, and we were jet washing away, and there's just mud and dust everywhere. And we spent 4 hours jet washing it. And he's like, come on, we got to go. I'm like, but it's not clean. He's like, we got to get it in the container. I'm like, fuck, we're going to get nailed in Australia for this.
Yeah.
So for the next 2 months, we were bricking it, thinking we were going to get stung. But luckily, we got through first time. So I was quite impressed with it.
Yeah.
Worth the effort.
And then, since you've been in Australia, have you undertaken any more trips?
Yeah, we've done done a few short trips. Done a few trips to the high country in Victoria, which is quite a sort of four-wheel drive mecca here, and I did a Simpson Desert trip in 2014, I think it was, supporting a couple of guys on motorbikes. That was good. So I took someone else's Defender 90 for him, and just followed them on their motorbikes. So that was good. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, on Monday we're driving to Uluru, so we've got a 5,000 kilometre trip coming up, because Lisa's sister's over at the moment. So we're leaving 2 days time.
Yeah. And how did like your family feel about you kind of undertaking that trip? Because you were a year on the road, right? Was it a year?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, before we got to Australia. Yeah. I think a lot of people didn't think we were going to do it. Like I said, it was in 2010 we decided we were going to do it. And the best way to ensure you're going to do something is to tell absolutely everyone what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because that's how you do it.
Yeah.
And I think everyone just thought, nah, they'll change their mind. 3 years, it's a long time. They'll change their mind. Nah, not changing my mind. We're going. I think my parents knew, though. I think my parents knew that we weren't going to back down on this one. You know. I don't know. My parents are quite stoic when it comes to things like that. They were worried. I think. My parents aren't. I mean, they're reasonably well travelled around Europe and places like that, but not any further afield. And I think, like a lot of people, their perceptions from the media and things like that is what sort of causes them to worry and things like that. It's quite hard to tell them that it's not quite like that. It's good, you know.
Yeah.
Like Russia, for example, as you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we got invited into so many. People were saying, "Oh, when you go to Mongolia, it'll be great. Everyone will invite you into their gers and stuff." I didn't get invited into one ger. Get into Russia. Well, I couldn't even leave. We couldn't even leave one town. We were getting invited over to people's houses like every night.
Yeah.
Like 3-4 nights in a row. We couldn't leave. I think it's just that perception that people, Russia's a bad place, you know, bad people there, whatever. But it's not.
Yeah.
It's not that at all.
And it's interesting, those kind of preconceptions. Were there any other countries that kind of really shattered your preconceptions about what you were expecting to kind of experience there?
I don't think so. I think I was really, like, Tajikistan was good. I was really pleased out in the Pamirs, the people in Korog and all along those sort of Wakhan corridor. People are fantastic. So that was good. I think Lisa was a little bit disappointed in Mongolia. I think she was really looking forward to that, and we just found that quite difficult. I'm not sure why, but we just found it quite hard. Just with people. I think they didn't know what to do with us.
Yeah.
Because we travelled quite remote in Mongolia. We did a bit of an off-road route from the main southern route down through the Gobi. We had a lot of old Russian military maps.
Yeah.
So we were following the roads on those. Turns out the roads on those were just dry riverbeds.
Okay.
So
we've got the same maps actually. I think we were probably searching the same websites.
Same stuff. Yeah.
I found those.
And I think there's a link on our website for those actually.
That's possibly where I got them from.
It might be, yeah. So we were following those with another French couple in their Land Cruiser, and we went for 2 weeks, and I think we only saw, in that sort of middle period through the Gobi, that sort of 10 days, I think we only saw like 2 people the whole time. It was awesome. Did about 1,500 k's completely off-road, isolated, picking up water from water wells. And, it was a good part of the trip, that.
Yeah. And how do you handle fuel on your vehicle? Do you carry jerry cans, or have you got a long-range tank?
I've got sort of a long-range tank. I've got another fuel tank tucked up in the back, so we got 110 litres on board and 2 jerry cans, so we got 150 litres.
Yeah.
Which is good for about, I don't know what it is now. It's about 1,000 k's, I think.
Yeah. And were there any places you struggled to find fuel? Because we had trouble in some parts of Russia finding fuel, but then once
Did you?
Yeah, but once you kind of learn that you're not actually looking for a fuel stop, you're looking for kind of a man in a truck selling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we got the sort of long range tanks and stuff, we tended to not have any dramas anywhere. Uzbekistan was a bit strange. We heard about fuel shortages there, and then kept seeing fuel places, but we, again, because of the amount of fuel we could carry, it wasn't really an issue. We did come unstuck a little bit in Siberia, heading back from Magadan. You notice the fuel prices changes quite rapidly around, I think it's Suzuman, up near Usnera, up at the sort of top end of the Road of Bones. So on the way back, I refused to stop and pay the sort of, I don't know how much it was, but sort of, I say it's 30% or whatever extra, until we get back to where it's a bit cheaper.
Yeah.
So anyway, I get to the fuel stop I know is there, and I know that it's cheaper. And he says if they've run out of fuel, and we had about 200 k's left in the tank, which wouldn't have got us to the next fuel stop. So I said to him, when is the next fuel coming? But he was being a bit of an arsehole, and he didn't want to tell me anything. And then so we camped out, and then I saw him exchanging fuel for shotgun shells with this other Russian bloke. I was pretty annoyed at that because I didn't have any shotgun shells to give him. So we waited, camped overnight, came back the next morning. Is there any fuel? He was still being an arsehole, not saying anything. And, but there was a construction site there. They were constructing a new bridge that went to Tom Tom, and I got chatting with those guys and said, "Oh look, do you have any diesel we could buy for you?" And they're like, "Yeah, no problem." And they just came over with 40 litres, filled up the tank, didn't want any money, and off we went.
Yeah.
So that was the only real time we had sort of, well, I guess, delays from fuel shortages, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was only about 12 hours. That wasn't a huge issue.
Yeah. And again, you kind of, there was one point in our trip where in India, a fella gave us 40 litres. No, actually that's different. In Iran, a fella gave us 40 litres from jerry cans because we were struggling to find fuel. And then in India, a fella at a garage, the manager, filled up our car for free. And
oh wow!
And that was just mind blowing. And at that particular time, we were going through a proper tough stretch, and we were both really quite miserable and struggling. And just you kind of encounter kindness like that, and you're just like, wow, that's incredible. It blows your mind
insane,
when people are that. You know, it's just you can't imagine that, can you, in the West?
No, not at all.
So after that trip, when you arrived back in Australia, how did you find kind of assimilating back into normal working life? Was it a bit of a reverse culture shock to be back?
No, it wasn't too bad actually, because I'll tell you where we did have a bit of a culture shock was when we flew out of Vladivostok. We went to stay with a friend of mine in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
We didn't fly straight to Australia. We had, because we were waiting for the truck to get here. We didn't want to come here and spend a boatload of money, so we worked out the cheapest places to go. And one was staying with my friend in Hong Kong, and then we went to Indonesia after that. But because we'd been in Siberia for 2.5 months, and as you know, they don't speak any English. Me and Lisa had started speaking Russian to each other as well. And then we got to Hong Kong, and all of a sudden, there's all this advertising around, and there's you know all fast food outlets, all this stuff. And we walked into a McDonald's, and I didn't know how to order food. I didn't know what to say. I turned to Lisa and I was like, "How do we say I want that?" And I was like, "Oh, I think they speak English here in Hong Kong." Like, it was really bizarre. And we noticed as well, speaking to my friend, that our vocabulary had sort of started to go a bit backwards. Like, we were speaking, our English became almost basic.
Yeah.
So we were chatting to her, and we couldn't think, like, getting our words out and expressing ourselves and all that stuff. We just found that really difficult because we've been speaking Russian for so long.
Yeah.
It was very bizarre.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, it probably wasn't that long. It was probably a couple of days, but it was definitely, like, it shocked me. I think that's why I remember it so well. It was quite a shock.
Yeah.
Having that.
So that long trip then, did that have any kind of profound change on your life, or were you kind of, because you'd done so many kind of smaller trips, the big long trip wasn't so dramatic. It wasn't like you know, one day you decided you wanted to drive around the world and you left, and you'd never done anything like that before. You'd kind of gradually built up. So, but did it still change your life in any way?
I think it's just cemented, and sort of given you priorities, or given us priorities as to what we want out of life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because when we left the UK, we had a lot of possessions and stuff that you obviously build up. We had to sell it all to come here, so we sold just a heap of stuff, and we got here with just the truck and the trailer, and nothing else. So since we've been here, we've been when we've been looking at buying stuff, you know, we just like, well, do we actually need that, or can we get by it, you know?
Yeah.
So amassing all of those things that you did back home without even thinking about it, we're very conscious of that here. We're not just going out and buying stuff, like, you know, we might have sort of 10 years ago, you know.
Yeah.
So that's really good. I'm really pleased about that.
Yeah. Well, the benefits to that are massive. You know, when we live in a world where, you know, consumerism is just, well, basically religion now, isn't it? And everyone are massive consumers. And when you see the amount of just junk that, you know, that is being produced in China and Thailand and all these other countries, made of plastic, you know, things that you don't need, things that are ridiculously disposable. You know, I think, you know, the benefits to living, and we noticed exactly the same thing when we returned. We sold everything we owned pretty much to fund our trip, and then when we returned, we're like, well, I'm kind of liberated now. I don't need all the other kind of small stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's
same
nice
as us.
Feeling.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, and that's typically most of the people I've spoken to on the podcast have all experienced a very similar thing, and and it's interesting because it's a byproduct of what we do. Really, it's not the reason why we travel in this particular way. It's a byproduct and something that's kind of changed and shaped our lives. But I found it massively benefiting.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Right, well, I think we're approaching the hour. I think we've been chatting for about an hour. Have you got, other than this trip you've got coming up next week, have you planning anything else, or kind of... is it
not really. I mean, we'd love to do another long trip. I mean, we're tentatively planning a Pan America's trip, but to be honest, like, we've got, like, again, coming back to finances, because that seems to be all I think about, looking down the track, we don't really have any sort of retirement fund or anything to fall back on. So the reason we came to Australia was to earn more money than we were in the UK, and just to get ourselves sorted. So that's kind of what we're doing at the moment. Just bought our first house, so hopefully that'll be our sort of investment for retirement.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll just keep saving and not buying junk and see what happens.
Yeah.
We have ended up with a dog, so we might have to wait for the dog to pass on before we go anywhere. But she's 12 now, so not long, hopefully. And we'll see what happens, I guess. But Pan America's is kind of and then maybe we'll come back to Australia and do a lap. I think with Oz, it's so well sort of laid out. I know that people say, oh, there are remote places to Oz, but when you've been sort of knocking about Siberia, it's kind of a little bit different.
Yeah.
It'll always be here, and you can do it in your retirement quite comfortably, I reckon. So we'll just leave Oz on the back burner and maybe shoot off to the Americas for a bit.
Cool, very good. And if people want to find out more information about you, where's the best place for them to look?
Yeah, probably just our website, www.siroccooverland.com, and there's links on there for our Instagram, Facebook as well.
Yeah.
So with the Uluru trip, I'll probably just post sort of daily pictures to Instagram and probably Facebook as well.
Yeah, perfect. And I will also put all the links on our website as well,
Cool.
so people
Thanks,
can
man.
find you without a problem. Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. Griff, thanks very much for taking the time to chat to me. Just
no worries.
It's always difficult chatting to people in Australia with the time difference, and I'm glad we've managed to find a way to make it work. I'm sure you're probably going off to bed now because it's getting on here. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, Griff. Cheers. Thanks.
All right, mate. Cheers. Bye.
Gareth's approach to overlanding is one based very much in the tradition of vehicle-dependent expeditions. He seems very pragmatic, considered and informed, traits that all seem apparent when looking at the level of detail on his website. When I was researching our trip back in 2010, the Sirocco Overland site was one that I would frequently return to for general inspiration and information, so be sure to check it out. You can find all the links, photos and supporting info over on our website, theoverlandingpodcast.com. If you like the show, please subscribe on iTunes and write us a review, as this helps boost our podcast up the listings. We're also Overland Tribe leaders on the new autofocus social media platform Drive Tribe. Sign up, search Overlanding Podcast and join our tribe for unique content. If you're an overlander yourself and have an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at aroundtheworldin800days@mail.com, or you can get in touch with us via our website, theoverlandingpodcast.com, where you'll find links to all our social media channels. As usual, many thanks for listening and joining us around the campfire. That's it for this week. Bye.